anything there?
circumstance.
I realize it's all circumstantial. But I feel like I saw things at home. Maybe they were just practicing.
They sound pretty happy.
I know.
I know, I was like, good moves.
All rise. Please be seated. For all the record, let the record reflect that the defendant is present with her attorney, the state is present, and the jurors are present and seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
I see you all a happy bunch this morning. And your laughter. Well, thank you all very much for getting here as soon as you could. Yesterday, the state had started their case in chief. Is the state ready to proceed today?
Yes, Your Honor.
How about the defense?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Okay. Call your next witness.
State calls Dr. Melinda Flores.
Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Dr. Flores.
Good morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell it for the court reporter?
Dr. Melinda Flores, first name Melinda, last name Flores.
How are you employed, Dr. Flores?
I am a medical examiner for the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office.
And what is your educational background to become a medical examiner?
I have a bachelor's of science in biology from the University of Texas Pan American. I then went to medical school in San Antonio at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. I then moved to Dallas and did a combined anatomic and clinical pathology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. I then stayed in Dallas and moved to the medical examiner's office and did a one-year fellowship in forensic pathology. I'm board certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
And you work at SWIFT's?
Correct.
What is SWIFT's?
SWIFT is the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Science. It includes the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office and the crime lab.
How long have you worked there?
Almost 3 years now.
And did you also do a fellowship there?
Yes, I did do my fellowship there.
When evidence is received at SWIFT's, any type of evidence, what's the general process for the laboratory or the medical examiner's office accepting that evidence?
Are you asking in terms of my role as a medical examiner or the crime lab?
Well, sure, let's be more specific with your role.
So depending on the case type, the medical examiner may collect evidence at the time of autopsy and submit it to the evidence registration department. And then from there, law enforcement will coordinate with the crime lab as to what they want to do with that evidence.
When you receive a deceased person to perform an autopsy, how is that person tracked throughout the SWIFT's database?
Every person gets their own case number, just like you would at your doctor's office, you get a medical record number.
Okay, and is that the IFS case number?
Correct.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to perform an autopsy on a person by the name of Charles Hudson?
Yes.
And that would be associated with case number IFS-20-2 24330-ME.
Yes,
And the ME means medical examiner.
yes.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 9, which has already been admitted for record purposes. An autopsy photo. Is that the same case number as associated in Exhibit 10, which is the autopsy report?
Yes,
So this is the same individual, Charles Hudson.
yes,
And showing you Exhibit 10, is this a copy of the autopsy report, which includes your findings regarding cause of death?
yes,
Okay, and this is a true and accurate copy of your medical examination report?
yes.
At this time, I'd like to admit States 9 for all purposes, but not publish, and States 10 for all purposes.
No objection to State's Exhibit number 9, Your Honor.
All right. State's Exhibit number 9 is admitted for all purposes.
Let's just find out.
No objections to State's Exhibit number 10.
All right, State's Exhibit number 10 is admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish States 10.
You may.
All right, publishing States Exhibit 10, Dr. Flores, it's a little bit fuzzy. There we go. That's the IFS number we were talking about, correct?
Yes,
The unique identifier for Charles Hudson.
yes,
And we see that he was 61 years old at the time of his death.
yes.
How was he identified when he was brought into the medical examiner's office?
I believe he was identified by his driver's license at the hospital and my family.
Okay. And then let me skip to page 4 of 7. This is the toxicology for Charles Hudson. Everything looks to be negative here except for, and I will probably mispronounce this, rocuronium.
Rocuronium.
Thank you. What is that for?
It is a paralytic drug. It's used by hospital staff to be able to intubate a person.
So this was likely administered when they were trying to save his life.
Yes,
But otherwise, we see that his blood is negative for any type of legal or illegal drugs and alcohol, correct?
yes,
Going to page 6 of 7, which is your findings. What were Charles' injuries?
he had injuries to basically all of the main parts of his body, so head, trunk, meaning the torso, and extremities. He had laceration, which is a tear on his head, and then he had scattered abrasions, which are scrapes, more lacerations, but tears, and contusions, which are bruising, kind of all over his extremities, just scattered around. He had a subscapular hemorrhage, which is bleeding underneath the scalp soft tissues. He had some contusions of the front parts of his brain, so bruising on his brain. He had hemorrhage, more bleeding around the base of his brain, around the cerebellum. He had bleeding in soft tissues of his neck, tongue, chest, intestine, and around his bladder. He had more lacerations, tears of the sac that surrounds the heart and of the left ventricle of the heart. He had laceration and contusion of his lung, another laceration of the spleen, some superficial, meaning just on the surface of the intestine and stomach that had been medically repaired. He had fractures of his ribs on both sides, the right and left sides. He had fractures, which are breaks, of the right clavicle, which is the collarbone, his mid-chest plate, his spine in the neck and in his thorax, and then he had fractures of his left arm and left forearm.
What were the most fatal injuries for
It's everything altogether contributes to death. It all winds up causing blood loss, and which can affect a person. With blood loss, there's less oxygen, it affects your ability for your brain to function. So everything is contributory. Some of the most severe injuries, though, would probably be the brain injuries.
The brain injuries. And then also there's the laceration to the heart, correct?
Correct. And then, yes, the laceration of the heart is also severe, as is actually the rib fractures, because it can affect your ability to breathe.
Fair to say, but for this collision, Mr. Hudson would not have died.
Correct.
Now, down here, manner of death, what are the different categories at the ME's office for manner of death?
There are 5 manners of death: natural, suicide, homicide, accident, and undetermined.
So homicide would be an intentional killing of another person, correct?
Homicide is one person's actions resulting in the death of another. Usually, we don't argue intent on our side, but
Sure.
it's one person's actions leading to another person's death.
And then motor vehicle accidents, for the purposes of the medical examiner's office, are typically listed as an accident. Is that fair to say?
Yes, car crashes are typically accidents.
Yeah. And these are not legal definitions for the purpose of this courtroom, but rather a category assigned by the medical examiner's office.
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense?
Dr. Flores, I just have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Generally, when there is a traffic accident, is it common for a field analyst to go to the scene?
If a person is declared deceased at the scene of a car crash, yes, a medical death investigator will go to the scene.
Okay. Was there a field analyst in this particular case?
No, because he was not pronounced deceased at the scene. He made it to the hospital and was pronounced deceased there.
And FA, the term FA is field analyst, correct?
Field agent, yes.
A field agent. And the field agent, tell us the process of how a field agent kind of becomes involved in these types of
I'm going to
cases.
object as to relevance since it didn't apply in this case since the victim was not deceased at the scene.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Do you want to respond?
Yes, Your Honor, there was a field agent in this particular case that spoke with the detective on scene, and that was incorporated in her report with the field agent. And it's going to questions that I'm asking regarding what happened at the scene.
Okay. State's objections overruled.
So, Dr. Flores, if there is field agent notes, would you incorporate the field agent notes in your report, or do you have access to the field agent's notes?
I'm sorry, I'm confused. The field agent did not respond to the scene.
Okay.
We do, so when a death is reported to our office, a field agent will speak to someone over the phone, but that does not mean they go to the scene. So
Okay.
that's what occurred in this case.
The field agent spoke to someone over the phone?
Correct.
Okay. And when the field agent is involved, do you have access to the notes that the field agent made notes
Yes.
of? Okay. And as far as the notes in the field agent, because those notes become a part of your assessment as well, correct?
They can be, yes.
Okay. Was it ever determined whether or not Mr. Hudson was wearing his seatbelt at the time of this accident?
In the field agent's report, it says it's unknown if he was wearing his seatbelt at the time, and we never got any more information beyond that. So I don't know.
And as far as the injuries that you depicted or saw during your autopsy, are those injuries blunt trauma from blunt force trauma?
Yes.
Okay. And are those typical signs after a tragic car accident?
Yes.
And if a person is partially ejected from a motor vehicle, would that indicate to you that there may be signs that the person did not have their seatbelt on?
That's possible. The seatbelt can also tear it, which, that's why I can't say.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. No further questions, Your Honor. Pass the
All right.
witness.
State?
Yes, Your Honor, just real quick, just under the rule of optional completeness, I'd like to finish that sentence that defense was referencing. Dr. Flores, when she asked you about it was unknown if the decedent was wearing a seatbelt, it continues to say, at the time since his car door window and part of his seat were ripped out, meaning they weren't able to determine it because the whole driver's side was ripped off of his vehicle.
Yeah, and I'm gonna object the narrative and ask that the state ask questions and answers.
Ask a question.
Is that your understanding, Dr. Flores, that they were unable to determine because those pieces of the vehicle were missing?
That would make sense to me. It does say, just to read the whole sentence, it says it was unknown if the decedent was wearing a seatbelt at the time, since his car door, window, and part of his seat were ripped out.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any other questions by the defense?
No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be released?
No objections from
No
defense.
objection.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
State calling next witness.
State calls Officer Floyd Kincaid.
Good morning, officer. Good morning. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Statement received.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Officer.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Detective Floyd Kincaid, Floyd, Kincaide.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm a detective with the Dallas County Sheriff's Department.
How long have you been with the Dallas County Sheriff's Department?
A little over 14 years.
14 years. What type of training do you go through to become an officer and then detective with DSO?
Typically, you can do 2 years in the jail, and then test for deputy. You can go through a 6-month academy. Or if you have 30 hours of college, you're allowed to test for deputy, 6-month academy, do enough time on the street, take enough different training courses. And typically, for detectives, it's a lateral position, so you apply. And there'll be some kind of an oral board, they'll take a look at your training, and they'll make a decision.
Okay. And you're a certified peace officer in the state of Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your current division that you're working in?
That's special investigations.
What is that?
It's a little bit of everything. It's a combination of narcotics, threats against elected officials, threats against county buildings, persons, and also human trafficking.
Now, back in 2020, were you working in a different division?
Yes, ma'am.
What division was that?
I was out in the patrol traffic division.
Okay. And I believe you were working as an accident investigator?
Yes.
What specialized training or certifications do you have to work as an accident investigator?
Well, initially during the academy, everyone's given a basic accident investigation course. After that, you take the intermediate accident investigation course, and then depending on how you score in intermediate, you go on to advanced.
And did you make it to the advanced level?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've taken basic, intermediate, and advanced accident reconstruction.
Yes.
How long did you work in the traffic unit investigating accidents?
A little over 10 years.
And if you had to put a number on it, which I'm sure is going to be hard, about how many accidents would you investigate a week?
A week, just as a primary or just in general?
In general,
In general, 20 or more.
20 or more a week.
Yes.
And then over the course of your 10-year span in the traffic division, how many collisions do you think you investigated?
Close to 1,000 or more.
I want to direct your attention to December 17th of 2020. Do you recall being involved in an investigation regarding a wrong-way driver on I-30?
Yes.
Okay. And were you dispatched to the scene? How were you sent there?
We were dispatched by radio.
Okay. And what part of I-30 did this take place?
It's eastbound I-30 between Carroll and Munger.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as states 11, 12, and 13. Google Maps showing the location of the collision. Are these an accurate indication and depiction of where the collision took place?
Yes.
And would aid the jury in understanding where this took place and what the scene looked like?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This has already been tendered to defense on text share, but tendering 11 through 13 for inspection. State would move to admit and publish.
No objections to State's Exhibit 11 through 13.
State's Exhibits 11, 12, and 13 are admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, publishing states 11. This is kind of a bird's eye view showing where on I-30 this happened in relation to the rest of Dallas, correct?
Yes.
In the middle here, we see Dallas Downtown Historic District, correct?
Yes.
So this collision happened east of the downtown area, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Publishing States Exhibit 12. This is the area kind of zoomed in on I-30 and where the collision took place, correct?
Yes.
And again, Exhibit 13, a satellite view of the highway, correct?
Correct.
And you said this happened in the eastbound lanes, correct?
Yes.
So in this picture, that would be the bottom highway where cars are traveling to the right?
Yes.
Okay. And we see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes of traffic, is that right?
Yes.
And then the highway above it would be the westbound lanes of traffic, correct?
Yes.
Now, this part of I-30, is that in Dallas County?
Yes, it is.
And here's a silly question for legal purposes. That's in the state of Texas, correct?
Correct.
And is this considered a public roadway?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, when you were dispatched to this scene, this would have been around 4:29 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And you said this was between the exits of Carl and Munger?
Yes, Carroll and Munger.
Carol and Munger. What were the conditions on the roadway? Was there a lot of traffic at the time?
Not very much. 4:30 in the morning. There's traffic, but not a lot.
Okay. Was it still dark out?
Yes.
Okay. When you arrived on scene, what is your role versus other police officers that arrived to the scene?
Well, my role, when we get to the scene is first secure the scene, and if there's any kind of need for medical attention, we assist the medical professionals with getting anyone out of the scene if they need to.
What does it mean to secure a scene?
Basically, make sure that no one else can enter or drive through the scene to either destroy any evidence or cause any further injury to anyone else that's out there.
Okay, so the lanes of traffic were shut down in this area,
Yes, ma'am.
and once you got there, everything was secure. What did you do next?
The next thing, we start to investigate, but DFR, for this crash, they told us that there was still someone in one of the vehicles that was too easy to get out, so we had to help them with that part before we could really kind of do anything else, because if there is anyone that needs medical attention, we've got to get them out to get that attention first, and then we can do our investigation.
Okay, and DFR for record purposes stands for Dallas Fire and Rescue.
Yes,
So firefighters were already on scene when you arrived,
Yes.
correct? And were other police officers already on scene when you arrived?
I believe there were 2 others, yes.
Okay, and then more trickle in as time
Yes,
goes on. Do you kind of take lead as the accident investigator when you're on the scene?
Yes,
Okay. Was Charles already taken away in the ambulance when you arrived?
I believe he was, yes.
Okay, and you said that there was one person on scene that was refusing to get out of their vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was that?
The defendant.
The defendant, okay. Known as Jessica West.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 14. This is a screenshot showing the defendant in her vehicle. Is that what you recall from that date?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a true and accurate depiction of what she looked like in her vehicle when you arrived.
Yes, ma'am.
Tendering to defense counsel, State's Exhibit 14.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibit 14 is admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Publishing State's Exhibit 14. What was the defendant's demeanor like when you arrived?
Just not wanting to cooperate with us or medical personnel.
Okay. And she was naked in her car, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I think I've done a good job of trying to crop it to where you can't see anything, but she is in fact not wearing any clothes in this snapshot, correct?
Correct.
Do you see this same person in the courtroom here today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify her by where she's sitting in an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's sitting, from my point of view, on the left side of the courtroom. She's wearing a pink-colored top with a silver necklace.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant in open court.
The record will so reflect. Did the defense have an objection?
No, I was saying no objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
How was she finally removed from her vehicle?
We actually had to enter the vehicle and pull her out of the vehicle.
Okay. Did firefighters have to break windows to get in as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was your concern when you were interacting with the defendant?
Initially, she had a very large cut on her knee that needed medical attention. So we really wanted to try to get her to get with the medical professionals.
So your concern was to make sure that she was treated for her injuries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So was she finally loaded onto the ambulance and taken off to the hospital?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after she was taken off, what did you do next?
After that, once everyone that needs medical attention is off the scene, we begin our investigation. So that's looking at the debris field, looking at the damage between different vehicles, looking for skid marks if we can see them, any kind of gouge marks into the roadway, just to try to figure out the cause of the collision.
And these are clues that help you kind of piece together how it occurred?
Yes.
Do you also incorporate witness statements into that as well?
Yes, ma'am. If we have witnesses, we will include witness statements.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
And it's routine to take photographs of the scene as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Not from my portion of it, but VCU will come out and take photos.
And VCU stands for?
Vehicle Crimes Unit.
Okay. So I'm going to show you photos from the crime scene. States 15 and 16, which is labeled. State 17 and then 18, which is labeled. Through 25, 26, which is labeled, and then 27 through 33. Are these all photos from the crime scene on I-30 from that date? Are they true and accurate representations of what that crime scene looked like?
Yes, they are.
These have already been tendered to defense, but showing them 15 through 33.
to State's Exhibits 15 through 32.
All right, State's Exhibits 15 through 33 are admitted for all purposes.
Thank you, Judge. May I publish?
Yes, you may.
Publishing States 15. This is a view of the collision scene on I-30, correct?
Yes.
And to aid the jury, we've actually labeled Publishing States Exhibit 16. This vehicle closest to us is the defendant vehicle, correct?
Correct.
What type of vehicle was that?
It's a 2015 Hyundai Sonata.
Okay. And then in the background, a ways away, we see the victim vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And what type of vehicle was that?
Don't recall.
Would your report or crash report refresh your memory?
Yes.
Are you refreshed?
Yes.
What was the victim driving?
Nissan Maxima.
And then past the defendant vehicle and the victim vehicle, even further back, is the area of impact, correct?
Yes.
What is an area of impact? What does that mean?
That's just the area on the roadway where the initial impact from the collision occurred.
Okay. Publishing States Exhibit 17, which is the original photograph, and now Publishing States 18, which is the labeled photograph. We have the area of impact right here. Is that a gouge mark that we see in the
Yes.
pavement? What does a gouge mark indicate to you?
Gouge mark does indicate an area of initial impact.
Okay, so we see here the area of impact with the gouge mark, and then further down east, we have the vehicle, the victim vehicle, and then even further past that, we have the defendant vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Publishing States Exhibit 19, what are we looking at here?
That's just another view of the scene, looking at the Unit 1 or the defendant's vehicle.
And Publishing States Exhibit 20, this is a closer view of the defendant's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And earlier you said you take into account the damage on each vehicle, where it's located to assess how the collision occurred, correct? Where is the primary impact on the defendant's vehicle?
The primary impact on the defendant's vehicle is the front left or driver's side.
Publishing States 21, this is a side view of the driver's side of the defendant vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Publishing States 22, that's the rear of the defendant vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
States 23, passenger side rear view of the defendant vehicle.
Yes.
Publishing States 24, a front passenger view of the defendant vehicle.
Yes.
Okay. And then we see some spiraling on the windshield. Do you know what that could be from?
Typically, that's indicative of the driver's head making impact with the windshield.
Do we know if she was wearing a seatbelt?
We don't know for sure since she was already in the back seat, but typically that is indicative of someone not not wearing a seatbelt.
Publishing states 25, this is the victim's vehicle, correct?
Yes,
And publishing states 26, this is the labeled version of that same photograph, just to show the area of impact in relation to the resting point of the victim's vehicle, correct?
yes, ma'am.
Publishing states 27 of the victim's vehicle. This is a pretty catastrophic damage to this vehicle, fair to say.
Yes, ma'am.
How would you describe this type of impact and damage?
That type of impact and damage, the entire left side, well, nearly the entire left side of that vehicle has been sheared off.
Publishing states 28, which is another side view of the victim's vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in this photo, we can see like the A-pillar and the door frame, like everything has been moved from its original location, fair to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Publishing states 29, which is a rear view of the victim's vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, now you earlier referred to a Unit 1, and that's in regards to your crash report, correct? There's a Unit 1, a Unit 2, and a Unit 3, fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Unit 1, for your purposes, is what vehicle?
For our purposes, Unit 1 is the Toyota, or the Hyundai Sonata.
The defendant's vehicle.
Yes,
And Unit 2, for your purposes, is the victim's vehicle, correct? Now, there was a third vehicle involved with very minor involvement and damage, correct?
correct.
Publishing states Exhibit 30. Is that this vehicle that we see in this picture?
Yes, ma'am.
And what type of vehicle is that?
That's a Toyota Camry.
Okay. And states 31, showing the driver's front portion of the Camry. What type of damage are we looking at here?
Front left or driver's side damage.
Would you describe that as like a side swipe type of damage?
More or less. It's concentrated to the front corner.
States 32, a front view of that vehicle, and states 33, passenger side of that vehicle. Did that driver stay on scene to talk with police?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so you all captured his input in assessing how the collision occurred.
Yes, ma'am.
What was his name?
Do not recall his name.
Do you want to look at your crash report
Yes.
again?
It was Taylor Raymond.
Raymond Taylor?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, normally we'd have Mr. Taylor come testify as well, but did you learn that Mr. Taylor has since died?
Yes,
Unrelated to this collision, correct?
correct.
You did not sustain any injuries from this collision?
No.
Okay. Now, after talking to witnesses or talking to other officers who talked to witnesses and looking at those clues that you talked about, like gouge marks, damage, guardrails, etc., were you able to come up with a diagram explaining how the collision occurred?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Show you states 34. Is this a copy of your field diagram
Yes, it is.
showing how the collision occurred?
Yes, ma'am.
And states 35, a Google image showing the resting places of the vehicles after the collision occurred.
Yes.
And are these true and
objection, Your Honor, to State's Exhibit 34 and 35.
State's Exhibits 34 and 35 are admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish?
You may.
And while 33 is still on the monitor, did you notice the date on here says 2/2/2011?
I did not notice.
Obviously, that is incorrect.
Correct.
You do recall this crime scene, you were there on December 17th of 2020, correct?
Correct.
I honestly didn't realize cameras date stamped like that anymore. That seems like a relic from the 90s. Okay, publishing states 34. This is your field diagram, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And this, what is a field diagram? What's the purpose?
It's just a sketch.
Can
to
you
show-
zoom that in a little bit?
Zoom in, Your Honor?
Yes. Okay. So the jurors can see it better, a little better.
Yes, Judge.
It's just a sketch that kind of demonstrates what occurred in the collision at a basic level.
Okay. And Unit 1, you said, was the defendant vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Unit 2 is our victim vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And Unit 3 is that minor involved third person.
Correct.
How did you determine the collision took place? Or what were your findings, conclusions?
Basically, Unit 2 was traveling eastbound in the left lane of I-30. Unit 1 was traveling westbound, also in the left lane, against traffic in the wrong direction. It appeared that Unit 2 tried to avoid Unit 1, which is why the damage was so concentrated on one side. It was unable to avoid the collision, so the front left of Unit 1 struck the front left of Unit 2.
And then how was Unit 3 involved?
Well, after the collision between Unit 1 and 2, Unit 2 veered off to the right across multiple lanes of traffic, and Unit 3 was also traveling eastbound on I-30, and the front left of Unit 3 struck the right side of Unit 2.
So the collision between Unit 1 and Unit 2, that is our primary collision, correct?
Yes.
Publishing states 35. This is showing the area of impact in relation to the resting places of those vehicles, correct?
Correct.
So it appears that the defendant's vehicle traveled quite a distance from where the area of impact took place and where the victim's vehicle came to rest, fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as far as the damage to Mr. Hudson's vehicle, I'm gonna republish states 28. Y'all could not determine whether or not he was wearing a seatbelt based on the damage he sustained to his vehicle, correct?
No.
Now, as part of investigation, vehicles are typically impounded and held for evidence, correct?
Yes.
Is the defendant's vehicle still in impound?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to go view the defendant's vehicle at the impound?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Show you states 36 through 43. Are these all photos of the defendant's vehicle at impound?
Yes, ma'am, yeah.
And are they true and accurate depictions of what her vehicle looks like at impound?
Yes, ma'am.
These have already been tendered to defense, but tendering 36 through 43.
attention, Your Honor, to States Exhibit 36 through 43.
Thank you. States Exhibits 36 through 43 are admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Publishing states Exhibit 36, a rear view of the defendant's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
37, another view from the rear.
Yes.
States 38, this would be the driver's side view.
Correct.
39, driver's side view.
Yes.
And in 40, we see that primary impact in that left quarter panel, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
States 41 is the front of the defendant vehicle, correct?
Correct.
States 42, passenger side of the defendant vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And 43, the windshield, correct?
Yes.
As part of identifying who the drivers of the vehicles are, do you run motor vehicle registrations on those vehicles?
Yes, ma'am, we will call out the license plates over the radio, and our dispatcher will put the registration card in there.
And was this Hyundai vehicle registered to the defendant, Jessica West?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she also have an active driver's license at the time?
Yes.
Now typically, in order to get a driver's license, an individual has to pass a driver's test, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Written and also out and about driving, fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone who has a driver's license, and probably those that don't, would understand that driving the wrong way on a highway is incredibly dangerous, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And a motor vehicle can be considered a deadly weapon, correct?
Correct.
Because its use in a collision can cause serious bodily injury or death.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
All right. Defense?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Detective McKay, my name is Myra McIntosh, and I represent the citizen accused Jessica West, okay? And we're gonna talk about what happened on December 17, 2020. You were called out to the scene, you were in your patrol car by yourself, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and when you got to the scene, there were other officers and Dallas Fire Rescue were on the scene as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you've already indicated that when you arrived, the, Mr. Charles Hudson was already taken to the hospital, is that right? Okay, and when you got out your car, did you kind of survey what was going on?
Briefly, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and did you go up to Ms. West's car?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time in the morning, it wasn't a lot of traffic, correct?
Correct.
Do you normally work that beat, or have you ever?
At the time I was assigned to Midnight CS.
And I think that the state has showed you what has been admitted as State's Exhibit 13 on the screen here. And you said that this happened between Curl and Munger. And what's the next exit if you're entering onto the freeway, right? What's the next exit? Is that Grand Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do you know how far apart Curl and Munger is, the ramp from Curl and Munger to Grand is?
Not precisely, no, ma'am.
Okay, and Grand, this is more of like a, although it's on a freeway, it is in between a residential area, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's not like it's in a business district or anything, is that correct?
Well, it's a combination of residential and businesses.
Maybe one or two mechanic shops off the side of the road, but for the most part, it's more residential area. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right? All right. And the closest ramp is Grand Avenue, coming from going westbound back toward downtown, going back this way
Yes, ma'am.
to get to Carolyn Munger. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you got to the car, were there other officers already surrounding the vehicle of Mrs. West?
I don't recall.
What do you recall, were, there were safety mechanisms that had been deployed in Mrs. West's car, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, in fact, looking at State's Exhibit 14, this white area, what is that?
That's the remnants of an airbag that's been deployed.
Okay, and do you recall that, pretty much all the airbags in the car have been deployed, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and in fact, they had to cut out, they were going through the fire department, or other officers were going through cutting out the remnants, or cutting out that airbags in each door, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and this was a four-door car, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you got to Mrs. West, she was sitting in the back seat, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and she was the only one in the car?
Correct.
Okay, and how would you describe her demeanor?
Disheveled, uncooperative, panicked.
Okay, and when you say uncooperative, let's discuss that. Did you ask her what her name was?
I don't recall.
Okay, do you recall her saying, she paused a little bit and said, Jesse?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you remember that having some discussion with officers where she said,
I'm gonna object to hearsay under Aldridge.
Sustained.
do you remember trying to gain information about what her name was?
Not particularly.
Well, let me ask you this. Did she tell you, how did you determine what her name was?
I honestly don't remember.
Well, let me ask you this. When she was inside the vehicle, do you remember saying, I think this is a mental health crisis?
I do recall.
Okay. And do you remember, what is the code, the police code for mental health?
1096.
1096. Do you remember saying, I believe this is a 1096?
Vaguely.
And do you remember when you were by her car, she didn't get out the car right away, did she?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And we had indicated, like, on these,
The numbers.
on her, in her car, in her windshield, there was significant damage. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm showing you State's Exhibit 24, what has been omitted. Right here in the top right-hand corner, we can see her windshield was cracked, or had, the glass was definitely broken. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you said that was consistent with Mrs. West probably hitting her head during the incident, is that, during the accident, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And it's not uncommon when you come to a scene for people who have been in such a tragic accident and to have hit their head to be disoriented, is that right?
Correct.
It's not uncommon for them to be confused,
No, ma'am.
dazed.
No, ma'am.
Okay, and in fact, going back to the mental health, it was very cold that night, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mrs. West was inside her car with nothing on, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the time of the accident, wasn't she more concerned about how the officers was doing?
Yes.
In fact, what was she saying?
Objection, hearsay under Aldridge.
Sustained.
Is there, did you find her behavior to be odd?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and so odd that you said, I think this is mental health. Now, even when you were at the scene, you had walked away. Do you remember walking away from Mrs. West's car? And you went to go talk to Mr. Taylor, Raymond Taylor?
Yes,
Okay. And you talked to him and he was explaining to you his perception of what happened, is that right?
yes,
Okay. And then, you were there for quite some time talking to him, is that right?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then you came back and you remember talking to your supervisor, I do believe, that was on duty?
I don't recall exactly who it was.
Okay. Were you instructed at some point to get Ms. West out the car at all costs?
I don't recall, but I do know that I got her on the vehicle.
Okay. After you talked to Mr. Taylor and then you went to talk to another officer, did you not go back to Ms. West's car?
Yes,
Okay. And at that point, she was still inside the car, is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And officers had to physically pull her out of the car, is that right?
yes, ma'am.
All right. And when she was put on a gurney by Dallas Fire Rescue, do you remember that?
Yes,
She was raising up, trying to get off the gurney, is that right?
I don't recall.
Okay. At some point, Mrs. West was taken to the hospital, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You stayed at the scene,
Yes,
all right. Do you recall having conversations with officers, saying,
Objection, hearsay, out of court statement.
Sustained.
okay. Do you recall what you said? Or do you recall, did you have problems trying to determine, let me ask you that, did you have problems determining how this accident happened?
no, ma'am.
Okay. Initially, did you not believe that the point of impact happened closer to where Mrs. West's car was?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall saying that you believe that Mr. Hudson's car?
Objection, out of court statement.
Overruled.
Do you recall stating that Mr. Hudson's car may have rolled several times?
I don't recall that.
During your investigation, do you recall, early in the morning, I think when you said that the crime scene was secured, it really wasn't secure, right? Didn't the tow people come out and they started moving the lanes, moving the inside lane?
I don't recall the tollway or the HOV contractor doing anything at the scene.
You don't remember saying, why are they moving the lanes?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Okay. Isn't there a center lane that goes, on 30, that's HOV?
Yes,
Okay. And what time do they typically move that lane?
typically they'll do it before morning rush hour starts.
And what time is that?
About 5 o'clock.
Okay.
They'll normally have that done.
And you were out there at 5 o'clock, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if the rush hour people were out there moving the lanes during that time?
I don't recall that, but it could have happened.
Okay. Do you recall talking to other officers who were at the scene about this incident that you were talking to them?
About the crash in general?
Yes.
Vaguely, yes, ma'am.
Who's all involved when you're trying to determine a crash incident or when you're putting it together? Who helps you?
Typically, it'd be, aside from, of course, myself, any other officers that are there on scene. If we have a supervisor or VCU comes out, then they'll assist with with me putting together the initial report, and then VCU will take care of any follow-up investigations.
And there were, as we look on State's Exhibit 24, there's a barrier, correct, separating eastbound and westbound lanes, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there black marks on that barrier?
Yes.
And at some point, did you believe that one of the cars had hit the black mark? Had hit the barrier?
I don't recall, but it's possible.
How long did it take you to put together this crash incident report?
That I don't remember.
How long were you out there before you determined what happened?
We were out there for a pretty good while, but I don't remember exactly how many minutes I was out there.
And when it relates to Mrs. West's car, do you know if it was running when you walked up to it?
I don't believe it was.
And oftentimes, officer, you said you've investigated over at least 20 accidents or more a week, and collisions, you've done more than perhaps 1,000 in your career, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Oftentimes, when two cars who are traveling and the speed limit was at least 55 miles per hour on that freeway, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. When two cars are traveling at high rates of speed and they collide, it's not uncommon for both cars to keep going. Is that correct? Like they don't come to a complete stop.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So even if Mrs. West was going on the wrong side of the street, wrong side of the freeway, and she hit Mr. Hudson's car, it doesn't mean that she's gonna come to an automatic stop, right?
Correct.
All right. It doesn't mean that she was trying to get away, right?
Correct.
And were you able to determine if Mr. Hudson's car rolled?
Don't believe so. It wasn't a rollover collision.
And during your investigation, you talked to Mr. Raymond Taylor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, his car had very little damage, right?
Yes.
And his car was not impacted by Mrs. West's car at all?
Correct.
And you've investigated other accidents, right? Okay. And have you ever been called to testify in civil court?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been called to testify in civil court as an accident reconstructionist?
That's the primary investigator of a crash.
Okay. And have you ever testified in any wrongful death cases in civil court?
No, ma'am.
Okay. But it's not uncommon, right, for an accident reconstructionist to go to a wrongful death case?
Since I haven't done it, I wouldn't be able to say.
Not all accidents, would you agree with me that not all accidents where someone dies is a criminal case?
Correct.
And that's not all car crashes where someone dies is a criminal case. Would you agree with me?
Correct.
And And Detective Kincaid, have you ever investigated another accident where someone was driving the wrong way on the street or freeway?
Yes.
Okay. Is that, it's not necessarily uncommon, is it?
It's not uncommon. It does happen.
And during that time, as we said, it's a residential street, so there's not, on Grand Avenue, do you know what the lighting is like on Grand Avenue at nighttime, at 4 in the morning?
I don't.
Okay, it's fair to say it was dark though, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, State.
Just a few follow-up questions, Your Honor. Did the defendant have visible injuries that you could see?
Yes, ma'am.
What were the injuries that you could see?
I remember her having a good-sized cut on one of these.
Is that why y'all were so concerned with getting her out of the vehicle
Yes, ma'am.
and getting her medical attention?
Yes.
When you are investigating how a collision occurs, does that develop over time? In other words, do you discuss it with other officers, look at different pieces of evidence, and the theory kind of develops over time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you may talk about and workshop possible ways that it occurred, and then you eventually come to your conclusion, fair to say?
Yes.
Were there any skid marks left by the defendant vehicle?
No, ma'am.
What does that indicate to you?
It indicates that prior to the collision, the brakes weren't applied and didn't lock up.
So prior to the collision, this defendant did not brake prior to impact, correct?
Based on the evidence that we have in the scene, yes, ma'am.
Based on no skid marks left by her vehicle.
Correct.
Whereas the evidence showed that Mr. Charles Hudson attempted to swerve out of the way, correct? Would you consider driving the wrong way on the highway reckless?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Detective Kincaid, when you talk about, as an officer who has done many accident reconstructions and went out to many accidents, have you ever, when you got out there, you had contact with Mrs. West, you said she was uncooperative. She wasn't resisting arrest or anything, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you, who have had contact with many of people, if you've had investigated 1,000 collisions, over 20 accidents a week, you probably had contact with many drivers, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and within several minutes of being in her presence, you said this is mental health, right?
I recall saying something close to that, yes.
And it wasn't that, normally when people are in accidents, do they typically get out the car?
Yes, ma'am.
And they're typically, as you said, she was injured, they're trying to get medical treatment for their injuries, right?
Yes.
Isn't it true that Mrs. West had to be coerced out the car?
Yes.
Okay, and it wasn't because she was being, trying to resist or run or anything like that, right?
No, ma'am.
She did not do anything, assaultive to any officer, did she?
No, ma'am.
In fact, when you walked up to her, do you remember that she was kind of playing with her hair in the back seat?
Yes, ma'am.
And she just didn't seem normal, did she?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything else for this witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you, officer. May the lead. State, call your next witness.
State calls Nicole Enns.
Would you raise your right hand for me, please? Right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Listen. State and proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell it for the court reporter?
Nicole Enns, Nicole, and my last name is A-N-S as in Edward, Nancy, Sam, only 3 letters.
And feel free to move that microphone just a little bit closer so we can hear you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you. Now, you're a registered nurse, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Where do you work, ma'am?
At Baylor in downtown Dallas.
Okay. And what's the educational background you received in order to become a registered nurse?
I did 4 years of undergrad at Georgia Southern University, And so I have my bachelor's degree, and I'm also currently enrolled in an acute care nurse practitioner program.
And you work, back in 2020, did you work in the emergency department of Baylor Scott and White?
Yes, I've worked there since June of 2019.
Okay, so how long in total have you been a nurse?
I started there as a new graduate nurse June of 2019, so
Okay.
almost 6 years will be this June.
Now, as part of working in the emergency department, when patients are admitted to the emergency department, do you regularly start an IV and take their blood for laboratory purposes?
Yes, essentially it goes based on whatever their complaint is, but in this situation, the patient being a trauma patient and confused, yes, always.
Okay, and what is the purpose of gathering their blood and sending it for laboratory testing?
Pretty much every patient, we want to know what's wrong with them. Are you having a medical emergency? Is something wrong with your lab work? That type of situation. And then in trauma patients, we also do CT scans to make sure that there's not a traumatic injury.
Now, you were working on December 17th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall being part of the medical team that treated a patient by the name of Jessica West?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State 45. This is a portion of the medical record for Jessica West, correct?
Yes.
And we see a note here indicating when the IV was started and by you, Nicole Enns, correct?
Yes.
And this is a true and accurate portion of that record which memorializes that process, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit States 44, which is the complete medical record from the emergency department from that day for Jessica West. It's accompanied by a business record affidavit and has been available to defense since August 23rd of 2021. And then an excerpt from that, which is States 45.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, State Exhibits 44 and 45 are admitted for all purposes.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
So at the top, we see this is for patient Jessica West, correct?
Yes.
I'll zoom in. And we see admitted on December 17th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Going down to this note here, peripheral IV, what does that indicate?
That an IV was placed in the right AC, which would be like the end of the arm right here.
Okay, on the right arm.
Yes.
And this is done when the patient is first admitted to the emergency department?
Yes.
Okay, and so we see the placement, date, and time indicated here, correct? That would be 5:20 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is the gauge of the IV?
Yes, ma'am.
And what gauge is that?
20 gauge.
And then how many vials are typically taken of a patient's blood?
Being that she is a woman, it would be 4.
And then what is the actual process of putting the IV in and drawing the blood?
Well, first we gather our supplies, which is all in like sealed packaging. We open the packaging, set it all out, and then tell the patient what we're gonna do. Obviously, hey, I'm gonna insert an IV into your arm for this necessity of, I need your blood work, we need CT scans, we need to give you medication, whatever the situation is. And then we would put a tourniquet on the arm, clean the site that we're gonna place the IV in, which on her was her right AC. And what we utilize to clean with is chlorhexidine. It's something that comes in our IV start kits. And then we poke with the needle, we put the J-loop on, which is basically like a little extension tubing, draw the blood out into a syringe, and then we place the syringe into the tubes that we send to the lab.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as States 46 and 47. These are the hospital vials of blood that have the patient Jessica West listed on them, correct?
Correct.
And these would be the vials of blood that you collected in this previous exhibit that's memorialized, correct?
Correct.
And this is a true and accurate depiction of those blood vials?
Yes.
State is tendering 46 and 47 to defense and would move to admit and publish.
No objections to states 46 and 47, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibits 46 and 47 are admitted for all purposes.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Publishing states 46. We see 3 blood vials in a biohazard bag, correct?
Correct.
And with the labeling Jessica West, correct?
Correct.
And BMCED, what does that stand for?
Baylor University Medical Center Emergency Department, and then DSHB 22 would be her room number in the ER, which would have been B22.
And states 47, just another picture showing more data from those blood vials, correct?
Yes.
Now, those blood vials contain preservatives, correct?
Some of them do, yes.
Okay, and do these ones pictured contain preservatives?
The blue one would have citrate in it because it's one that we utilize to draw like coags, blood clotting, and stuff like that. So it takes the citrate out of the blood so the lab can test how the blood clots. The other 2 tubes would not have any additives in it.
Okay. And the one that has a preservative in it, what is the purpose of the preservative?
The citrate, it prevents the blood from clotting in the tube, so that way the lab can take the blood and test how it clots. So they can test clotting factors like a PTINR.
I'll pass the witness.
All right, defense.
Ms. Benz, I just have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
So, back on December 17th of 2020, you were a part of the medical team that assessed Jessica West on that particular
Yes.
morning?
Mhm.
And of your assessments, do you recall in making any physical observations of Jessica West at the time that she was entered into the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were those physical observations?
There was a lot of things that happened in her care. When she came in, she wasn't the most cooperative, given whatever the situation may have been at the time when she came in. Obviously, we don't know anything about her. Does she have a brain injury? Does she have this? Does she have that going on? And we don't know until we get the results back from all of our CT scans, which showed no traumatic injuries, showed she has nothing wrong with her brain. She was acting very odd. She had a large laceration on her leg that she was just like digging in with her hands, which is kind of an odd thing for someone to do. She's also ripping the hair out from the base of her head and shoving it into her vagina.
Okay.
She's also not wearing any clothing.
And Ms. Benz, do you recall medication being administered to Ms. West to sedate her?
Yes.
And those type of medications that were administered to Ms. West, what kind of medications are those?
Benzodiazepines. It's like an anti-anxiety medication, and it just allows us to treat her medically, just because she was assaulting staff members and had to be restrained, so we could attempt to treat her to make sure if she has a medical emergency, we can take care of her and ensure that she's safe.
And in fact, she was also administered haloperidol,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
another benzo,
okay, and Ativan,
another benzo.
and so she was also administered lorazepam. And
That's Ativan.
Ativan, okay. But she was administered that at 5 milligrams, at 2 milligrams, at another 5 milligrams, and another 2 milligrams, correct?
Mhm.
So that was a lot of medicine that was administered to Jessica West to sedate her, is that correct?
I mean, I've definitely given more medication. I think it was an appropriate dose. We gave a little bit. She was still not cooperative, not able to treat her, so we administered a little bit more, all under a physician's orders.
And You would agree with me, giving that type of medication when a person comes in after a car accident or a car collision would be typical if you're trying to address some type of episode, mental episode, is that correct?
We could give it for multiple reasons.
But is it possible that it would be to address a person having some type of mental break or some type of episode? Would that
Potentially,
address-
yes.
Okay. And you indicated that she was doing odd things such as taking the hair from her head, trying to put it up her vagina, okay? And because there was some indication that she hit her head during this particular accident, there was a CT scan of her brain or her head, correct?
Correct,
And those came out negative, is that correct?
correct.
Was there also a scan of her body that was done as well?
Yes.
And did that reveal anything?
It revealed that there was a foreign object inside of her vagina.
And in fact, we later come to find out that that foreign object up her vagina was her key fob to her vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And what does that indicate to you? Or could that possibly indicate to you that that person is having some type of mental episode? And that's one of the ways or physical ways that they show that they're having a mental episode.
I can't speak as to why someone would put their keys up there. I don't know why they would do that.
Have you seen anything like that in the ER before?
Usually it's up their rectum and it's something that they did out of like, something that they wanted to do. But not necessarily like in this situation, no.
Okay. And also, when a person comes in after a car accident and they have an injury, such as the injury on her leg, there's a full workup on that individual as well, correct?
It depends. If the patient says, hey, I know my name, I know where I am, I remember the entire accident, it's just my leg that hurts, nothing else hurts, they deny drugs and alcohol, they don't have like a big distracting injury, which is like a big broken bone or anything like that, then we might say, hey, it looks like, yeah, it's just your leg injured, let's just, treat that portion of you. But if a patient is confused or, they're like, yeah, I've had a couple of drinks tonight, we would proceed with doing a complete scan.
So in this particular case, there was a full workup on Jessica West, correct?
Yes.
The blood vials that we shown, that was showing like the levels or anything that's in her blood potentially, correct?
The blood would show like her complete blood count, her comprehensive metabolic panel, which is like her electrolytes, and then her clotting factors in case she does have a traumatic injury, so we would know if she's able to like clot her own blood. And then we do, as part of an ACS guideline, we do run a urinary drug screen and an alcohol on every single trauma patient.
Okay, so what I'm particularly talking about is a full workup like a CBC, where you're checking other vital organs, such as
Yes.
the liver and the kidney and things
Right.
like that. Was that done in this case?
Yes.
And in fact, when there was a full workup on her, it indicated that her functioning levels for her kidney and liver were abnormal. It didn't go much into it, but from her chart, it says that those particular organs were abnormal.
I don't recall.
Okay. You got her mouth brushes.
You may.
Yeah, in fact,
Hold on one second. Ms. Taylor,
Yes, ma'am.
are you doing okay?
I'm fine.
Go ahead.
yeah, and if I may have a number so that I can compare that to State's Exhibit number 44.
Is the defense looking for a particular exhibit or something?
Yes, Judge, it's in the medical records. The medical records are voluminous. I printed out a portion of where it is so that I can go to it. Want to take a brief break, Your Honor, or do you want me to proceed? Okay, I'll just proceed. Okay.
We'll take a short break at 11 o'clock.
And Ms. Enns, so basically for when a person is admitted into the hospital and there is a workup done, there is a medical chart, correct?
Correct.
And this medical chart is State's Exhibit number 44. So if there are any like determinations as to other bodily organs such as kidneys or livers or any functioning that is found in that would be in this particular chart, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall after Ms. West was administered those type of drugs, Hyperdol and Ativan, if she at one point calmed down after the administration of those particular?
Yes, she did. We were able to treat the them.
And at that time, that's when she, did she indicate at that time that she was not aware of what happened or where she was at that time?
Yeah, she was not aware.
And was there ever any kind of reporting or any history workup on Miss West, such as has she been seen in any other emergency rooms or any other doctor's office? Was there a history analysis done?
I'm sure if she had ever been a patient at Baylor before, there is, we would have the ability to review those records. And it's the same with Methodist, Parkland, Cresby, we all utilize the same charting system. So if it was there, we would be able to view it, but that's not something that I recall.
Because now that we have it, the medical community kind of link their reports and their, if a person is inpatient or things of that nature, correct? Okay.
With most facilities, yes, not all.
And Ms. Enns, also, there was a CT scan because there was potential trauma to her head and that came back negative, is that correct?
Yes.
And the laceration that was on her leg or her knee, how was that treated?
It was sutured.
And when you say suture, just stitches?
Yeah, stitches. It was stitched closed.
Do you recall how long she was in the hospital?
She was there, my shift ends at 7 a.m. and she was there after I left. So I don't know how long she was there for.
Nothing further, Pastor Witness.
A few questions, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Just to be clear, the blood that you took when the defendant entered the emergency department, that blood was taken before any sedatives were administered, correct?
Correct.
So in any type of laboratory reports, we wouldn't expect to see those sedatives in the results, correct? You are not there to assess the patient's mental health, are you?
No, I'm not eligible or like certified to do that, to say if someone was having a crisis or not.
Okay. Have you seen people come into the emergency department with drug-induced mental health crises?
Yes.
But again, that's not your job to assess that, correct?
I cannot diagnose, I can only tell you what I see.
I'll pass the witness.
No further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be released?
No objection.
No objections from the defense, Your Honor.
Thank you, you're free to leave.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, would y'all like a short break at this time? Let's take a 15-minute break and be back at, let's see, 11:10.
Oh, Ross.
Please be seated. We're back on the record. Let the record reflect that the defendant is present with her attorney. The state is present. The jurors are present and seated. All right, state, call your next.
State calls Detective Jason Lane.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and help you God?
I do, Your Honor.
State name, proceed.
Good morning, Detective.
Morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell it for the court reporter?
Jason Chaney, C-H-A-N-E-Y.
How are you employed, sir?
Sorry, what?
How are you employed?
That's detective for Dallas Sheriff's Department.
How long have you been with the Dallas Sheriff's Department?
28 years.
Can you tell us your training that goes into becoming a DSO officer and then detective?
Went through, first year to become a jailer, then basic police officer. And many, many years later, became a detective.
Okay. What division do you currently work in?
Traffic.
And what is the traffic unit responsible for?
Traffic crashes, traffic enforcement on certain parts of the freeways in Dallas.
And if you wouldn't mind moving the microphone closer so we can hear you a little better?
Is that there?
Yes.
I'll fit real well in this, so.
What training or certifications do you have to obtain to become a detective in that unit?
Be a master police officer and an accident reconstructionist.
And what courses have you taken as it relates to accident reconstruction?
Basic, intermediate, advanced, crash, and then advanced reconstruction.
How long have you been in the traffic division?
20 years.
So the majority of your career?
Yes.
Okay. How does a role of a detective differ from the on-scene officers or the accident investigator?
Well, I'm in vehicle crimes, so we respond to any major vehicle crime. Most of the time, that's including death, or that is death, but any other major crime.
And do you recall being assigned to a collision involving defendant Jessica West?
Yes.
And what were your responsibilities as it relates to that case?
Well, they called me, I don't remember the time, sorry, but I responded in the middle of the night, early in the morning sometime, and by the time I got out there, one person was already deceased. And at that point, my job is to find out what charges to put on, if any, the driver.
Okay, so fair to say, the first responding officers are in charge of like closing down the scene and securing it.
Correct.
And then Officer Kincaid, who was the accident reconstructionist, his primary task is figuring out how the collision occurred, correct?
Correct.
And then you're kind of higher level, putting the file together for charges, fair to
Correct.
say?
And then I file the cases.
And file the cases with the district attorney's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what did you do when you were at the scene?
Took photographs, talked to witnesses that were on scene, talked to Kincaid a lot, and Kincaid actually, you know, he sees everybody and talks to them way before I do. Usually 2 or 3 hours after I get there. And determine what we needed to, what charges needed to be filed that morning.
And by the time you arrived to the scene, Charles Hudson had already died,
He was deceased.
and the defendant had already been taken to the hospital?
I believe she had been, yes.
Okay. What did you conclude as far as what charges would be appropriate in this situation?
I think we started with intoxication manslaughter, but after talking to Kincaid, he didn't believe that alcohol was involved, so we put on the manslaughter, knowing that we can change that, you know, we can go up or down as needed, but that's where we started. Coincidentally, that's where we stayed.
And the decision was made for regular manslaughter as opposed to intoxication manslaughter. Why?
Correct. When we got the toxicology report back, alcohol wasn't an issue, and we knew it was prescribed drugs. So, in order to keep me from getting grilled up here and doing intoxication, we just went with manslaughter.
Fair to say that with regular manslaughter, you just have to show recklessness, correct?
Correct, and that's what was easily done.
And driving the wrong way on the highway is reckless, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, you obtained a search warrant for the defendant's hospital blood, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that warrant was signed off on by a judge, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you obtain the blood samples and transport them to a laboratory?
Yes, we picked them up from the blood analysis room in Baylor, and we carried them to Swift's.
Okay. And Swift's is what?
Southwest Institute of Forensic Science.
That's the laboratory
The
that,
laboratory,
okay.
yes.
How is blood submitted to Swift's?
They have a process, we fill out the paperwork, confirm everything's the same, and put it into a refrigerator.
Okay, that's a refrigerated
A
lockbox,
lockbox,
correct?
correct.
So once you put the evidence in their lockbox, it can't be reopened,
No, it can
correct?
be taken out, it's gotta be taken out from the other side.
From the other side, okay. And then Swift's analyzed those samples, correct?
Correct.
When you were looking at this case, I know sometimes there's an issue of whether this is drug-induced or simply a mental health issue. Have you seen people abuse prescription drugs in your line of work?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Often, yes.
Okay. Have you seen people abuse prescription drugs in order to get high?
Yes.
And at the end of the day, what was your reasoning in the totality of the circumstances to file this as a manslaughter case?
It was reckless. It's not common behavior to drive the wrong direction down a freeway. Something was reckless to cause that.
I'll pass the witness.
Defense?
Detective Cheney, you're saying that something was reckless to cause that.
Mhm.
You don't know Jessica West personally, do you?
No, first time I was here.
And you don't know any circumstances as to what caused her to drive the wrong way on the freeway, is that correct?
At that point, I did not have a clue.
And when we talk about recklessness for the charge of manslaughter, which she is ultimately charged with, the legal definition, you're aware that the legal definition is that that person is aware of that substantial risk and disregards that risk, correct? Is that your
Okay.
understanding?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so the person has to be aware of a substantial risk and they consciously disregard that risk.
Correct.
Okay. And so the mere fact of a person driving the wrong way on the freeway, that in and of itself, you can't say whether or not that's reckless without having other factors or variables accounted for, correct?
Okay.
Okay. And Detective Cheney, you've responded to many car accidents or collisions,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And you said you're assigned to the vehicular crime unit?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been assigned to the vehicular crime unit?
A little over 5 years.
Okay. And in the 5 years, how many traffic accidents or collisions have you investigated?
I would have to look that up. A lot.
A lot. You can give me
Uh,
a ballpark figure.
Just regular traffic collisions,
Sure.
our office gets 200 a month, divided by 4 of us. You said 50 a month?
Okay. And of that number that you just gave, some of those, have a fatality that's involved, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Not all, you would agree with me that not all fatalities are a criminal offense, correct?
Correct.
And not every criminal or not every accident is criminal, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further for this witness, Your Honor, pass the witness.
State,
One question. The act, in and of itself, of driving the wrong way on the highway is reckless, correct?
In my opinion, yes, ma'am.
Nothing further.
And Detective Cheney, following up on that same question, the act in and of itself, without other factors, it could possibly show not to be reckless if there were other factors taken into consideration, correct?
Not really following you on that.
Okay. You're saying the act in and of itself, driving the wrong way on the freeway is reckless.
Correct.
Again, you agree with me that the definition is the person has to be aware of the substantial risk, correct?
Okay.
And they disregard that risk, correct?
If that's the direction you're going, yes.
That's the legal definition.
Okay.
So the legal definition for recklessness is the person understands or is aware of a substantial risk and consciously disregards that risk. Is that the,
Yes. that's-
okay. And if those factors are not met, then it does not satisfy reckless, correct? You would agree with me on that?
No, I wouldn't agree with you on that.
Okay. Okay. So if it doesn't meet the legal definition, then you would still conclude that it's reckless?
I believe it's reckless.
Okay, nothing further, Detective Cheney.
No further questions, Your Honor.
may this witness be released?
No objections from the defense.
Thank you, Detective.
Judge, may we approach?